Welcome to the Curiosity Solution. I'm your host, Beverly Beal. Join us as we explore the science of curiosity, share stories of people who've used curiosity to improve their lives, and maybe inspire some aha moments along the way. Welcome, everybody. It's Beverly again with the Intuitive Interior. And today's a little bit different podcast. Obviously, the first of the month, I usually have my energy forecast for the month from I Ching. But with this month's energy being that of the dog month in a dragon year, with both of them sharing the same element of yang wood, many of my clients, including myself, are experiencing things that, well, let's just put it this way. There's a lot of push pull going on and a lot of loggerheads being found. It's let's just put it this way. Life has been really lifey for a lot of people. And I thought I would kind of go through a few ideas and a few suggestions for people to kind of check in to see, well, what's really going on. Anxiety seems to be at an all-time high. And while I am no psychologist, I am no therapist, I am a keen observer of humanity, and I'm also a keen observer of all things Chinese metaphysics and a few little dashes of Western astrology in there as well. And something that I found recently is that when we're I mentioned earlier that we are in a dog month and a dragon year. This is called a clash energy. If you think about how magnets, when you try to put them together, they're just constantly vibrating, going back and forth and back and forth, and so there's this tension that goes on between them, waiting for one of them to flip and conform. And the dragon energy lives in the southeast sector. The dog energy lives in the northwest sector, of the exact opposite on the compass. And so we've had this real strong, just push, pull, tension, this almost like sandpaper energy that is clarifying a lot of things, but it's also been feels very disruptive. And when you combine that yang wood energy, yang wood's like, think about a tree. It knows where it wants to be. It's grounded, it's rooted, it's not moving, it is immovable, and it knows it's right. And you've got this, and we know we're right, energy on both sides. It's coming at us from all different angles. But how do we know we're right? How do we know that tension, that anxiety, that irritation that we feel is really our own? So I want to pull up some slides that for a class that I taught several years ago, talking about where a lot of these emotions actually come from. We're going to talk about social conditioning, generational patterns, possibly some past life experiences, and then some of the action steps that I personally have used to help me when it starts to overwhelm me. Now, again, not a trained psychologist. I just know the energy and I follow where it takes me. So first and foremost, social conditioning. What a lot of it right now is, what is being a good girl or good boy look and feel like? If we are under the impression that in order to be socially acceptable, there's only very narrow parameters for us to work through, then we will do everything possible to stay in community, because we are social beings. We need to be with our tribes. It's actually one of the challenges that we have right now in many parts of the world, is this tribal mentality. It's so strong right now that many are unaware and unwilling to question too much, because they will lose their support system. And sometimes that's necessary. The next thing to do is, when you're starting to feel this push-pull energy, is just monitor your physical body. Where is guilt and shame living there? Because when you're starting to question some of some of the long held beliefs that this is what the good people, as I put them in quotes, what are they, how does that work in the world you're living in? Sometimes certain body parts will be the go-to for problems. If we've ever had any kind of a physical injury, that weaker part of our body will be the first to fall. It'll be the first to say, "Hey, I'm in pain. Um, look at what's going on." Is it a neck ache? Is it shoulder pain? Low back pain often loves to, especially for us tall folks, it loves to just scream at us and say, you're not taking care of yourself. You're feeling guilty because you're not working hard enough. You're feeling shame because, oh no, I'm thinking differently. So some of these things are what may be showing up for you physically. The third thing is, are you feeling responsible for managing everybody else's emotions? Because maybe this is actually a little bit more of an issue for many women because of this long-standing belief that we're the helpmeets. We're the ones who are supposed to make everything good for everybody else so that we have a place to exist in this world. Now, again, I'm not saying that many men don't do the same thing. From a societal perspective, though, the females in the world have been the ones who manage the children's schedules, take care of the home, make sure that appointments are made and kept, um, in order to free up the mind space for the hardworking people in that household. And again, I grew up in a pretty conventional household, and I even found myself in the same kind of pattern. Now, part of that is because I'm really good at it. As a double Virgo with maybe more than just a slight bit of ADHD, I thrive, or I thrive at multitasking. Again, there's no such thing as multitasking, but I used to be extremely adept at code or a task switching. And so it was just easy for me to do that. Plus you add in that dynamic of control. When you feel out of control, you want to control what you can. So that's a little bit of a socially conditioned trap that many of us also are falling into, or have fallen into and have climbed out. The fourth piece of social conditioning that can really increase anxiety is this age old story that it is better to give than receive. Oh, okay. If for those of you who are listening and can't see the intense eye roll I just gave there, I just want you to, notice that it was there. This idea that has been handed down through many biblical teachings, many churches all like to discuss how it's this giving is so much more holy than receiving, placing the giver on top of and level of importance as those who are needing some help, those who temporarily may find themselves in a position where hey, I'm not able to do what I used to do. Perhaps there was an illness, perhaps there was a job loss, perhaps there was a massive, massive grief that is going on, and so you suddenly find that you're not quite there at the same capability that you used to be. Without people to receive, you're never going to have anybody to give to. And so if you're just giving to get rid of your junk, that's not a very good that's not a very good thing either. So again, socially, a lot of times people feel weak because they need help when in fact they're filling a need, a very valuable part of society. So when they are able to receive, they can then turn around when they're better able to return the favor. The fifth thing that often happens with social networks, and this again, it's not really social conditioning so much, but it's more about what are the networks that you're connected to. Many groups these days are they thrive on anger. They thrive on fear. They advocate almost incessantly for superiority, power over rather than collaboration with. When you start to feel a lot of overwhelm and anxiety and even some other intense emotions, the first question I would ask is, are these even yours? Do you, this kind of goes along with um, wondering if the group that you're hanging out with is optimized for your reducing your anxiety. Um, but if you can start to ask yourself, give yourself just the briefest opening of space to find out if the emotions that you're feeling are even yours, then you'll be able to identify, well, is this, if this isn't mine, if this is what the group wants me to feel, why do they want me to feel this? How do they benefit? How do I benefit? If the answer to how do I benefit is not in alignment to who you want to be, then it may be time for you to think that to thank the anxiety or the overwhelm for bringing this to your attention. The next step is addressing any potential generational patterns. Um, Number one, because just because we grew up a certain way doesn't mean that we will have the same exact challenges that our family of origin had. I'm going to just use myself as an example. I grew up in a farming family in the middle of Kansas. I do not live on a farm anymore. And so the effort to constantly be working, to constantly have make sure that loads of animals are fed, that the garden is tilled, that the fields are um, planted and harvested on time. The stress of making sure the animals are receiving the attention, the medical attention and the food and nutrition that they need. Those challenges do not exist in my world. And yet, every now and then, certain changes of season, they still bring up a certain level of agitation and anticipation of agitation and anxiety. And the key here is becoming aware of that. When my father um, was, oh gosh, he was probably in his 70s, early 70s. He had been in World War II for during the Battle of the Bulge, and um, even had the highly decorated commander Audie Murphy as his own company commander, and went on recon missions. And so, we heard many of these stories, just little bits and pieces down the road. But for that 50-year time period between his wartime experiences and the time that he finally went to the Veterans Administration to get some help for the PTSD that he was experiencing, we all, our entire family, experienced the after effects, the knock on effects of a generational pattern that did not get addressed in a timely fashion. So, for example, uh, around his birthday in early March, uh, we all would see this change come over him. And for about a 6-week period, that coincided with the time frame when he was under or behind enemy lines and under having a lot of interaction with the German military men. He was it was sometimes it was just hard to breathe right around him. And I could always tell that it really bothered him because he didn't know why he was reacting the way he was. And it wasn't until he experienced um, a wonderful therapist from the VA who talked to him about, well, what were the weather patterns of the time frame when you were there? Because as a farmer, everything revolves around the weather. He actually got specific dates. He was able to go back and recreate the timeline for all of these interactions And then all of that, along with the eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, EMDR, um, was able to separate that trauma from his daily life. It doesn't mean that the trauma never happened, but it lost the power over him. And sometimes all it takes is identifying, oh, wait a minute, this is a date that's coming up, because your body will always remember 3 to 4 weeks before the date of a certain event that felt traumatizing. You may begin to identify some areas of anxiety that is like, I don't know, free floating anxiety, who knows what's going on. Take a look at the calendar a month in advance and see if that's something that could possibly be behind it. So the second thing is, what are some mementos that you keep around? Um, a lot of times, this has to do more with family systems that were negating, or that you're still trying desperately to fit in and to the group, and you keep these items around as a way, you think, to keep them close. If that is the reason behind it, I right now am giving you permission to allow these mementos to either change your viewpoint around them or let them go completely. Maybe give them to another family member if you don't wish to keep them. That's another thing to consider. The third piece about generational patterns that may be contributing to this free floating anxiety and overwhelm: are you still feeling the obligation to please your parents? Do you, as a grown adult, still worry that, oh, if I say the wrong thing, my parents will be mad at me? Well, guess what? You're now an adult, just like your parents are an adult, and it's time to take the opportunity to try to become, to shift that parent-child relationship to more of a peer-to-peer. If that's too scary, that's what therapy is for. That helps you to role model this. There's family constellation therapy if your parents are not around anymore. There are many ways of readdressing that parent-child dynamic, and or grandparent-grandchild dynamic. Sometimes these patterns, they don't care how far back it is. Sometimes this generational pattern didn't even start with your grandparents. It could have started with your grandparents' grandparents. And because of the way that emotions kind of linger in our bodies, we do, if those have not been addressed, sometimes they like to play out for you in this reality. And again, it's just something to consider, especially if you haven't figured out that it has any other link to something that's going on in your day-to-day world, or something that happened in your immediate childhood. The last thing to consider about these generational patterns and anxiety: how often are you hearing your parents' words coming out of your mouth or echoing in your head? That controlling parent or the critical parent can be the source of a lot of that, the indecision and lack of clarity as to what's right for you. Um, I also like to tell the story of body issues. I am not a slightly built person. I'm not fat. I'm not thin. I am just a substantially built, strong person. And I have wide hips. I at 14, my father came up behind me, and as if he hadn't seen me before, and right in front of, at the time, the young man that I had a crush on, and happened to just let it out that, "Wow, Bev, you sure do have some wide hips. You're built like a broodmare. I'll bet you're going to be able to have lots of babies." Oh my gosh. Ugh. That keeps coming up in my head every time I try on clothes, especially those outfits that don't necessarily flatter my wide hips that did in fact bear two children. Um, Parents don't know what they say. and how the child will receive that. When that happens, if you're a parent and you're hearing things coming out of your mouth, you can never take it back, but there can be some um, preemptive, not preemptive, but post action, post uh, mouth garbage that you can try to pull some of that energy back because it does get stuck in their systems. And so if you're hearing that, you now get to control your mind and say, "Hey, thanks, appreciate it. Nice observation, but I'm going to choose to not allow that to control how I feel about myself anymore." So those are some of those generational pattern pieces. The next thing, and this is very controversial because again, not everybody is a big believer in past life experiences, and quite frankly, I wasn't either until I began doing more of this work. Is because I I think everyone is looking for explanations, and if it's something that is just there's no explanation whatsoever, sometimes then the anxiety or overwhelm is coming from a past life experience. Uh, so how you know this could be part of that have layers of that is if there is an intense interest in certain historical time periods. Um, I have been fascinated with the Holocaust since I was a little child. Now, I always believed that was because my dad had actually was one of the first soldiers who marched past Dachau after it was liberated. He did not go in, but he did see the people at the fence. He never said anything about it not till almost the very, very, very end of his life after he had done some of that EMDR therapy. But I must have picked up something like that because for me, it was always about how did people get to this point? How could others not know that this was happening? So I have many friends who are intensely interested in ancient Egypt. Others have other fascinations. So it could be that there was a lifetime that was part of that time frame, and I've discovered some of those in mine. Maybe it's just in my imagination trying desperately to make sense of things, but I don't know. I once I address that, it's like, okay, it can be more of an observational thing and not a I have to gobble this all up because this is helping me, even though it's very distressing. It's like giving a potential name to that distress. Hope that makes sense. The second thing is, do certain smells, or have you had any certain smells that bring up emotions and or images that do not align with anything else in your reality? When I first was introduced to essential oils, was in a class, and people were passing around the basic ones. Lemon, oh that's nice, so smells clean. Lavender, oh so nice and soothing, wonderful. And then they brought around something else, and then the fourth one was a German chamomile. Now I'm thinking chamomile tea, oh that's going to be lovely. Everybody else before me is like, oh it's neutral, oh I love this. When it got to me, all of a sudden I just said, okay, this one makes me feel really stabby. um, and I became extremely agitated. And I did not understand why, but I really wanted to throw that entire bottle across the room. Now, it wasn't mine, so I didn't. So pass it on to the next person with like just disgust. And the teacher at the time helped me do this like a past life regression where I just all of a sudden this image popped in my head like a movie where I had been a Roman soldier. I was the commander. I was trying to gather all of the troops up from an area within a field of German chamomile flowers. And there was one person who was being extremely stubborn, did not want to go because we'd been there apparently long enough. He had a family, and told me, okay, he'll follow me. So I turned around to leave, and he stabbed me in the back and left me to die in the field. That's the movie that showed in my face, and I'm like, okay, I don't even know if I believe this past life stuff, but that was weird. What it also did by going through that experience, I was able to then smell the German chamomile and no longer feel this oversized anger, betrayal, um, emotion that showed up. It's still not my favorite oil, but the intensity, that intense emotion dissipated. Music is another one of these uh, possible instigators of a past life experience. It could be that it just gets you into that nice theta wave, that brain state where you can really see, other things can come into your world, into your perception rather. But that may be another way to either elicit or calm down the anxiety. So kind of just notice. I'm not saying don't listen to music because that is absolutely not what I'm saying, but just notice um, what types of music may take you into almost like an altered state, if there is. So that one's a weaker connection. And then the last one is, have you experienced dread around certain groups of people, even when A, you've never met anybody from there, and B, if you're around them, no one's being threatening, they're just being people. If that's the case, there may be another past life connection to this oversized anxiety and dread. Perhaps you were a slave in a past life, and now you don't feel comfortable even now around certain groups of people. Or perhaps you were in some other group that was feeling marginalized or attacked, and now that somebody who might even have looked like a persecutor could be the next, what brings up that distant memory of, oh, I can't do that. So it's kind of a similar vibe as the first one about having the intense interest in historical time periods. It kind of is the antithesis of that. So just notice if that feeling that you're getting of dread around certain people, is that something that also could be coming from your generational patterns? Or is that could be that part of a past life experience? It could be a little bit of both. Now, all of these are great to start paying attention, but here you are, you've got all this anxiety. It's like, what do I do? How do I inspire assistance? Sometimes, really, what you need, the first things first, is look at your physical space. This is where the feng shui piece of my work comes in. Just look at the long-term piles. A lot of times when there is a lot of, there are piles in your world, uh, that means that there's something underneath it that is emotionally that you have not fixed yet, that you have not addressed yet, that you are unwilling to do the emotional work to tie it off. Um, the best way to clean up a long-term pile is to take about half of it, flip it over, and then whatever now is on top, address that. File it, put it away, throw it away, whatever you need to do, just take that part. And then that has decreased the load on the rest of it. If you can't do the whole rest of that pile, then just do the next little, like 5 inch or like 2 inches. Do the same thing, flip it over, so that way you can keep just whittling away at those piles that have accumulated. I am a visual organizer. I am a horizontal organizer. I love to see what I've got, what I'm working on, because that makes me, again, ADHD, a little bit of, okay, I need to see tactile. I've got to see what's going on. When I know I'm done with something, then I can put it away. If the pile has to stay there overnight, fine. I will work on it the next day. If the pile is still there the following week, barring any other travel or things like that, that's when I have to go back to, okay, what emotion am I pushing down? What is it in this pile that is inspiring anxiety? And then go through those first steps that we talked about. It's like, okay, is this mine? Is this something that that I'm hearing my parents yelling at me for? Is this something that maybe I have some other kind of past life thing? Look through those. Second, tune into your physical body to see, okay, do I need to deal with what's going on physically first, or do I have some kind of like a mental or emotional state that needs to be addressed first? This is where self-care, I mean, I'm a big fan of self-care. um, but sometimes self-care means doing the taxes. It means, going through those piles. It's not the bubble bath. Maybe it's a walk you need. um, so it is a difficult thing sometimes to see, if the self-care part is you trying to run away and avoid, or is that the reward for being honest with yourself that, oh no, I just need a 10-minute nap. Maybe that's all you need. The third thing is water. So, water for hydration is one thing, that's part of your physical body piece. But in feng shui, water and money are linked. So, if you have a water leak in your home, I guarantee you're seeing it in the way that money is dripping out as well. So look for any water sources that might be leaking. Make sure that if you have like a fountain, that it has water in it, that the pump is working right. Clean things up like that. And that also will help to reduce the anxiety, because anxiety is usually its emotions are also associated with water. So if you have this anxiety that's roiling around, especially in your chest, and where you're like having a hard time breathing, make sure you're hydrated. Check for the water sources, and then you can start to ask, okay, well, is this even mine? Who can I give this back to? Can I just grant this into the ground? Can I just send it into the earth and allow the earth to transmute this? Um, the fourth thing to inspire assistance is, it sounds again cliche, but it's to grant yourself permission to have peace. We live in a world that is right now feeling as if it is running on agitation, anger, and fear. It's very important to be aware of your surroundings and to, address the threat level, because, that's just wise. But then give yourself permission to have peace, to be peace, to grant peace to others. That grace, that trust, that um, internal relaxation ends up infiltrating into other people, and their nervous systems begin to calibrate to yours. So, that's another system, another piece that I will be bringing in down the road. It'll be a class that I will be offering starting next year. Will be an online course on how to do more of this energetic regulation as an individual level. But some of these are just some very basic bullet points. And the last question, or the last point here, is number 5, is simply to ask for help, allow others the gift of giving, ask for assistance if you somehow manage to find yourself overcommitted. Don't just sit there and let this anxiety, like, oh my god, I'm never going to be able to do this, I'm never going to be able to do it good or well enough or anything like that. Ask for help. Say, go to your manager and say, look, I have this personal thing happening. I'm going to need an extra day to finish this task. Or talk to, your instructors, your teachers, anybody else, your partner, and say, look, I am right now. Brene Brown has this conversation about being honest with where you are. How much effort can you put forward? Are you 100%? Are you 10%? Where are you? And to be honest, to say, look, I am only operating right now to a 20% capacity, and I just can't do the same things that I have been doing. And then if the partner comes back and says, wow, you know what, I'm also at that same level, then you can both grant each other permission to have the peace. And you have then asked each other, okay, this is what I can give, and you're able to give this. Between the two of us, we know now where we are, and that level of honesty uh, really does go a long way. So I hope this helps. Um, this is only the beginning of really looking for that level of anxiety reduction. But if you can go through these steps, it will begin to inform you as to, what is it that there are a lot of different ways of looking at this. Anxiety is with us always. There's always going to be some way that we feel like we're failing or we're not doing enough, or but maybe we are. Maybe you really are doing everything you possibly can with the energy level that you have right now, and that's enough. Being enough, we're always enough. And if other people want to put more on you, well, then that's where you get to be honest and say, okay, I appreciate that. I'm glad that you want me to do more, but right now it is not in my capacity. I hope this helps. And I will have my information in the show notes, because one of the things that I do with my transformational coaching is I offer these energy clearing sessions, these transformational sessions, where I help you identify, well, what is the generational story? What is the past life experience? How can we entangle that so it no longer has to show up for you as anxiety, as overwhelm, as confusion, chaos, etc. in this real world now? How can we break some of these cycles? Um, and so I do those. I have them by the individual session. I also sell a package of 4. I will have that information in the show notes if you're interested. And I look forward to sharing the November I Ching reading after the beginning of the month. Again, this dog month goes through November 6th. So the pig month doesn't start until November 7th. So all we have to do now is keep taking lots of deep breaths, keep grounding, go out in nature. The trees love your anxiety. They want to take it all from you because they're actually feeling pretty depleted right now, and that they'll do well with that. And just remember, you are enough, you are loved, and you are worthy of unconditional love. Have a good one.